Lord Jesus Christ, good morning.
Savior, to dispense our salvation in thine economy. Thou dwelled within the maid's womb, and unto all creation.
They say, and the infamous they, whoever they are, say that the only constant is change. And the one thing that I have realized about my life is thank God that I can change. Thank God that God can alter my course. Thank God that He can alter my heart. Thank God He can alter my thinking. God never changes. He is constant all the time. That is why we rely and we trust in Him. It is our problem most of the time when we don't trust in God. It is our problem most of the time when we don't believe that He can fulfill in His promises. Not His problem, our problem. The prophet Isaiah, in the 55th chapter, he talks about how we are supposed to seek the Lord when we're able to. And he says that the counsels of our counsels are not His counsels, and our ways are not His ways. His ways are so much higher than ours. His ways are so much more grand than ours. And we must understand that it is Him that we're supposed to follow. But oftentimes, our hard-heartedness is what gets us into problems as well. And therefore, that's what the sower talks about, the parable of the sower, but actually it should be the parable of the soil, right? It is the state of our heart that Jesus is talking about. He says that the sower comes along and he starts to sow the seed, right? Now, if you've ever been on the road, right, on the side, you have to kind of rely on it being really, really packed down and hard, right? But when he's going along, it says that some falls onto the wayside, that space, like I said, on the outside of the field. And that's where it gets trampled down, and that's where it often finds its way for no growth at all. And it says that the devil comes and he takes out those seeds, he eats it and devours it. Right? Again, it's a state of our soul. Every one of us, as I go through the different ideas of the soil, must understand that we all have been in those states, and sometimes we still are in those states. But on the people on the wayside, again, sometimes we find ourselves where the devil comes and devours all those things that we have learned when things start to tend to get hard. And it says, some fell among the rocks. And as soon as it springs up, it has no moisture and it withers away. What is that talking about? Why does Jesus bring this up? I have understood now that in Jerusalem and in those areas in Judea, there are much limestone deposits. And those limestone deposits, they will get little tiny pieces of dirt throughout the rocks, the deposits of dirt that are maybe 2 or 3 inches in depth. And some of those seeds at the beginning of the season, it'll catch in those deposits of dirt. And because it has a lot of rain and has a lot of sun and the rock warms it up, what happens? It grows really, really fast. But what happens after that is because it does not contain enough moisture, because it does not contain enough nutrients, those things die off really, really quickly. And that's what Jesus is talking about. It withers up and dies because of the lack of moisture. And it has no root because in the time of temptation, we get taken away by the devil, right? All of us have been in that place. I think at some point, everybody has known about Christianity. They have been at some sort of church. And what happens? Temptation comes and you are taken away. You get choked by the different things that are happening in the world. And then it says that some of the seed go by the thorns, right? And then the thorns grow up and it chokes the seed. And it doesn't bear fruit because all the passions and all the temptations and all the things that we struggle with chokes us. Again, it's the condition of the heart. Every single one of us go through each one of those layers of the soil. And finally, Jesus says at the end, he says that some of them fall into the good soil. And that good soil, it produces fruit and multiplies. That's our goal. That's our goal for us to get to. This morning, as we were heading here, My wife and I usually have conversations on the way. Sometimes we're quiet. And I usually rely on my wife to get the prosforo out of the refrigerator for us for the morning. But last night, she got busy. She was talking to people and ministering to people and getting things prepared. And this morning when I was heading here, I asked her, did you pull the prosforo out, the bread that we cut for the Eucharist? No, I didn't. When we don't have a convection oven, we had to put it in the oven, right? And before, I'm going to tell you, I would be livid about stuff like that. My anxiety would go through the roof. I would get temperamental. I would get mad. My wife keeps on, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. I'm like, you don't have to apologize. It's okay. God will take care of it. It's okay. And I realized at that moment, as my wife was apologizing to me, who I used to be is who she remembered me to be. But now I'm not that person anymore. God has produced in me something different because the condition of my heart has changed. The condition of my being has changed, right? You hear it all the time that I mention this most of the time during sermons, to love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your mind, and all your strength, right? That all that I'm talking about is all that you can do to bring yourself to whatever you have to God. You can only love God to the capacity that He has allowed you to love Him. You can only have the mind capacity for what He has allowed you to have. And as God begins to work in your life, He begins to change you. Not for your unwillingness, but for your willingness, He changes you. And that's what I look forward to. The love that I have for my wife far outshadows the fact that it was forgotten last night and that we had to do something. I love her more than anything now, and my patience for my wife has grown exponentially. And same thing for all the people here, the people that used to wound me and the people that used to say things about me. Those things used to hurt me so bad. But now, because I look at people through a different lens, because I look at people through a different kind of view of my life, I realize that if I was given the grace to be given the time to become the man that I am today, and I look forward to the man that I can become in the future, as long as the Lord allows me to live and allows me to have a little bit more time, I can become that man because He's patient with me, because He is unchanging, and He looks at me in a way that He loves me. Right? But God's love is not based on emotion. Yes, He's emotional, but He's not based on emotion. God's love is based on something so far beyond our understanding that we can't even comprehend it. We can't comprehend His grace. We can't comprehend His mercy. We start to, right? And the thing you got to understand, especially when you're married, when you have a person that's living in the house, if that person is not teaching you about Jesus Christ, you're going in the wrong direction. But if that person is teaching you mercy and patience and kindness, I don't know how much time that my wife, through some of my passions, has given me so much patience that she has learned how to love me through all of my sinfulness. And I ask her, how can you love me? My wretched self, how can you love me? Because she too, the soil has changed. I often think about the time when, I know I have mentioned this many times before, I was a landscaper and I did ranching and all these things. And all these times, what would happen, my dad sometimes would need me to go. I worked with my dad for many, many years. I would go with my dad, and one of the things that we did was fence work, right? Out at the ranch, and for different clients, we do fence work. And out at the ranch, you'd have miles and miles and miles of fence that you'd have to do. And it was hot. It wasn't sticky because in Colorado there's hardly any humidity, but it got hot. And while we were out there, between the two wooden posts, you'd have to pound in these metal posts. You have this big, huge pounder that you put on top of it, had a weight on top of it. Those were hard enough to do, but every once in a while, so the stability of the fence would remain, you'd have to dig out a hole and put a post in that hole. Now, why do I mention this, right? Because if you understand what Jesus is talking about that hardness that we go through, there were certain places along the fence that it was so hard that you couldn't dig it out with a shovel. You go up there with a shovel, you could scrape a little bit of it off, but it had been packed down by ice and wind and rain and everything else, and years and years and years of being driven over or moved over or walked over, and it was so hard you could not penetrate the ground. So what did you have to do? You had to go get different tools. You had to go get a bar. A bar is a weighted piece of steel. It's about 6 feet tall, 5 feet tall, with a point on one end and a flat blade on the other end, and you started to have to work. You had to work. You had to work, and you had to pull that up, and you had to take the shovel and dig some of that out. And then you'd have to work, and sometimes you'd hit rocks, and sometimes you'd hit the hardest ground that you could imagine. But eventually, as you started to work through that ground, you found yourself digging down into the hole. That is what we need to understand about our lives. We are hard. Every one of us, every single person in this room, including myself, have been hardened by the world, by the passions, by the sinfulness, by the reactions, by us looking at things on the internet, by us looking at the news, by all these things, we become hard. And you know what happens? We teach our children to be hard. We teach our children to be prejudiced. We teach our children to be angry. We teach our children to be anxious. They're so malleable, they pay attention to everything that we do, and we instead turn them hard. But what do? How do we change that? Prayer. I'm always going to mention prayer. Prayer is one of the things that we use to break up that hard ground. And if you get your prayer rule down, I don't know how many of my spiritual children come to me and say, Father, for about 4 or 5 days, I did my prayer rule in the morning and night, and guess what I did? I was able to conquer my passions. And then I didn't pray for 2 or 3 days, and I fell headlong into it. And I said, well, what's the matter with you? Why did you stop praying? You started gaining traction, and the first thing you want to do is stop praying? You can't get to that point where you ever feel comfortable. You always have to be uncomfortable, because going towards God is uncomfortable. Going towards God is challenging. Going towards God is down, digging through that hole, going through the layers of the hardness of our hearts in order for us to become the men and women that we need to be. We need to get all that junk out of our lives. And once that hole has been done, what happens? Put that post in there. You put the concrete in there. That's what we have to do. God becomes the person that fills in that space in our lives. And again, as Isaiah said, the prophet Isaiah said, you got to look for him while he can be found. You got to look for him now. Because right now, you and I still have the freedom right now in this country to come and worship. But there might be coming a time where I might not have the freedom to come. We'll have to fight our way to get to the church. We'll have to fight our way to get to a crypt or underground place where we are able to worship. And then you'll see whose faith is really true. You'll really see whose faith is really strong. Because again, going by what I've seen, people are at that place where some of us are on the wayside, some of us fall among the rocks, and some of us are in that thorny place still. But Lord, have mercy on us that He's given us another opportunity to take that chance for us to take that prayerful bar and start breaking up that hard ground, so to dig out that stuff that doesn't belong. We have to continue to work on our soul. If you don't work on your soul every single day, you're going the wrong direction. If you're not praying every single day, you're going in the wrong direction. Every single day, you better be working on your soul, because there may be a time where you won't be able to find God. There may be a time where it's going to be very hard to see where He is at, because just like we've seen in Nigeria the last few years, they have killed and they've martyred over 100,000 Christians in that country. Burnt down churches, destroyed churches. And you know what those people do? They go into burnt down churches with no roof in the blazing sun, and they do liturgy. They go in there and they worship God, because He can still be found. He can still be found. Don't ever be afraid to take steps forward. I know oftentimes that was my mind. My mom always used to tell me, there was a song she used to remind me, Lord, I love you, just don't send me to Africa, right? I mean, that's a hard thing for us to do, to go to Africa, to go out there in that hot and where the bugs are and everything else. You think it's hot here, going to Africa? But you know what? If that's where God calls me to do, then I will do whatever God calls me to do. You follow God without fear because God has tread those places before us. He has gone and he has seen the beginning and he's peered toward the end. And as he looks at the end, he peers towards the beginning and he knows all the stuff that's going to happen. It's just us to be able to trust God. Trust him, trust him, trust him every single day. Trust him. You trust him with all of your heart, all of your soul, and all of your mind that you can muster. And as you begin to trust him, you begin to love him. And as you begin to love him, you begin to trust him even more. And as you begin to trust him even more, you begin to love him even more. And you got to continue working on that hard ground that's been packed so hard by the world. This world has nothing that it can do to us unless we allow it to. This world has nothing it can muster that can destroy us. The Son of God came into the world to defeat death. He came, he conquered, and he is here forevermore, sitting on the throne, waiting for us to be obedient. That's the one thing about orthodoxy, is obedience. Learn to listen. Learn to be obedient. Learn to listen to what the spiritual father has to say, and you will go far. But if you continue to harden yourself and say, I know what I'm doing, and then you end up stepping on the landmine, like I've said many times, and you blow your legs off, nothing I can do except help you pick up the piece. But until then, keep working on that big hole, getting all that junk out of your life that doesn't belong. And I promise you, if you begin to pray and you begin to learn how to fervently pray, all the things that are hanging you up right now, you'll start to remove those things out of your life. There's no anxiety, there's no anger, there's no dirty movies, there's no violence, there's none of that stuff that can take the place of God once you allow God to inhabit your heart. And as a matter of fact, those things will not even be able to penetrate those things, and your eyes will be like, I'm not going to look at those things anymore. I'm not going to listen to those things anymore, because I want my heart, my mind, and my soul to be for Christ and his glory. So let us glorify and praise the name of the Lord today as we worship him and we strive to work on the good ground in our hearts to multiply.
Hast thou proved her to them that shout, O God of our fathers, blessed art thou, both now and ever and unto ages of ages. Amen. Deign to grant restoration.